Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mindful Constitution podcast. I'm here today with a very special lady, Elizabeth Gascoigne. I'm saying it right,
You
right?
nailed it. That was like the best I've ever heard
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay, good. I know. I was like, this looks like a tricky name. I'm going to practice a couple times. But Elizabeth is the founder and CEO of Absence of Proof, which is a non-alcoholic event curation company,
Yeah,
which
our
is
fancy word for it.
yeah, which is really exciting. You also basically have an online marketplace for alcohol-free spirits, which is really cool too. But I want to hear from you, like, how do you describe Absence of Proof to the
Yeah.
person upon asking?
I think it gets more and more complicated every day, honestly. Um, which is a good thing because it means that we're getting new revenue streams and expanding more. But yeah, at our core, Absence Approved is a non-alcoholic event company. Our passion is creating and curating non-alcoholic experiences for folks to connect, whether that be nightlife experiences, daytime experiences, but really just fostering a social environment without alcohol. And from there, we were getting a lot of requests from people in different cities that we hadn't yet expanded to. And they were like, we want to do this at home. Like, can you give us tips, tricks, whatever? And so I created an online marketplace so we could just ship directly to the end customer nationwide. So that's kind of where we expanded. And now we do event consulting, we do weddings, museums, all sorts of different things. So we're a little bit of everything.
Yeah, so crazy. I know, I was just saying before we hopped on, it's been so fun watching you just like finding each other on TikTok randomly,
I
I
know.
think
I love TikTok in that way.
is where I first like started following you and just watching the growth of your baby explode. I feel like it really has. I mean, you've been featured in lots of different media forms, and it just seems like you've been getting lots of positive attention and feedback, and that there's really this need for more alcohol-free events where
Thank
people can
you.
connect. I know, it's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it's
excited
been
for you.
really, really good.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to dive in more to hear about absence of proof and evolution of that. But I want to start by asking about your own kind of path with sober curiosity and where it started. I
Mhm.
know it's definitely been more of an emerging area, so I'd love to hear what your journey looked like with it all.
Yeah, I would say I kind of started before it got trendy. I'm like I was before it got cool, but yeah. So I stopped drinking for the first time when I was 19. Alcohol and drugs were a problem for me in my teenage years,
Mhm.
and it got to a point where I was like, "This is just not who I want to be. This is not the life that I want to live. My life outcomes were not what I wanted them to be." And I didn't really know what was causing that, but I knew that there were factors in my life, i.e., drugs and alcohol, that were not helping. And so I told myself I was going to cut out everything for a year, go sober for a year, see what happens, and then I would reevaluate. And in that year, my life completely transformed. I mean, the time that you get back, the energy that you get back, motivation, everything that you get back when you go sober is pretty insane. And so at the end of the
Mhm.
year, I was like, why would I start again? Like, why would I reincorporate something that clearly was not helping me become the best version of myself? So I was sober for 3 years. And then I decided to reincorporate alcohol in moderation, mostly because I was in my young 20s and I really didn't want to miss out on what I felt like was an important life stage. Being young in your 20s, going out, like all of that, I didn't want to miss out on that. And I felt like I could actually have a relatively healthy relationship with alcohol after I was sober for 3 years. It wasn't destroying my life or anything like that. But I also, again, kept going back to like everything that I allow in my life needs to be making my life better, or else it doesn't have a place. And alcohol was not. So I ended up removing alcohol again about a year ago. And then I was officially sober curious or sober. I like to be a little bit careful if I say sober because I'm not an alcoholic and I want to be respectful of people that sobriety is not a choice, where they are, it's a disease for them and they need to be sober. And so I want to be careful with the language I use. So I say alcohol free now.
Mhm. Yeah, you touched on so many different interesting points. One is noting that not necessarily knowing the root cause of unhappiness sometimes, but with normalized patterns of drinking, we can often overlook that if we just tried to separate ourselves from alcohol a little bit, maybe that could actually provide us some clarity to discover where those sources of dissatisfaction lie. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, you stopped for 3 years and then you started drinking again. And so did you feel, what happened in the time that you did start drinking again? Was there any big kind of rock bottom-y type of moments, or were you more just like, this just isn't doing it for me at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there was definitely mornings where I woke up and I was like, might have been a little bit embarrassing last night. Like there was that kind of thing, but it wasn't to the extent when I was a teenager where it was like debilitating anxiety, blacking out all the time, all of that. And I'm grateful that I didn't have those type of rock bottom moments when I reincorporated alcohol. But I also think that because I didn't, it took me longer to be like, I don't really need this in my life. There's the quote where it's like, until the pain of staying where you are becomes greater than the pain of change, you won't change. And I think that that's where I was at, where it was like, well, alcohol is not that bad, but it's also not good. So I finally was just like, got to cut it out again.
Yeah, just getting to a point where it's kind of knowingly preventing you from reaching your full potential and just not bringing anything to the table. Mm-hmm. And the other thing you said too that stood out is really differentiating between sober curiosity, alcoholism, alcohol-free. I think there's this like really interesting gray area that sober curiosity presents, which is that you don't have to wait until you're totally miserable with alcohol to remove it. And so I completely understand what you're saying about respecting like sobriety as a necessity versus a desire. And that's a really cool space created by sober curiosity, especially too, as you know, like lots of toxic behaviors around alcohol are normalized. So there's definitely a room to explore how it's impacting our lives. Without necessarily being an alcoholic. And even if you are removing alcohol by choice, maybe you still indulge in weed or, other things because you aren't someone who felt like they were addicted. So it's an interesting area that's created. And I think it's important to note that respect out for people who feel like it's a need to eliminate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me about the evolution of absence of proof. So when you decided to eliminate alcohol, how did you start to develop absence of proof?
Yeah. So when I first cut out alcohol, absence of proof was not really on my radar at all. I would say it took about 6 months from when I removed alcohol again, to when absence of proof was kind of born as a concept. And it really came from a conversation and series of conversations that I was having with my partner and my friends. And I was like, I wish there was somewhere where I could still go out, still have a good time, still dance, still meet people. I just don't want to be around a bunch of drunk people. And I don't want to have a like sugary mocktail at a bar. Like that doesn't cut it for me. And I also was at this point in my life where I was starting to become a little bit unhappy with my career choices. I felt like the career path that I was on was not something that I wanted in my long term. And while I was super grateful for everything that it gave me, it just was not where I wanted to be in 10 years, like the next promotions or whatever. And so at that point, I was like, it's kind of now or never. I need to either start a company and figure this out and leave my corporate job, or I'm going to commit to doing corporate for a while, which is not something that I wanted to do. So it was kind of like this perfect storm of things that happened that led to being like, okay, let's get serious about a business concept. What am I passionate about? Health and wellness. What's a small section of that I'm passionate about? Alcohol-free, sobriety. And then absence of proof was born. I was like, let's create something where people can party sober. And 6 months later, here we are.
Yeah, seriously, here we are. For sure. I know it seems like it's really been something that was a missing link in the social setting of New York City is where you're located to, which I feel like is important to note because there is so many options for nightlife, but it sounds like there's not a lot of options for alcohol-free outing nightlife. And one thing that sounded like it was missing for you was this connection to something you're passionate about. Maybe that wasn't existent in your corporate trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was in advertising sales at Amazon. And again, I learned so much. And I think that Amazon really taught me how to run a business, to be honest. I don't think that I could have started this without the knowledge that I had gained. but selling advertising was not my life calling. You know, it was not what I wanted to do forever. And so I was like, okay, I could think about other things to do at Amazon, or, you know, entrepreneurship has always been on the back burner for me. I've always wanted to do it. And I kind of had this like now or never moment where I realized that at some point I'm going to want kids. And at some point I'm going to have a mortgage, hopefully, or whatever. And I'm going to have responsibilities greater than I have right now. Like I am a true free bird. Like I can do whatever I want. And it's such a privileged place to be in. And so I need to take advantage of that and at least try to start my own business now, because it's going to be so much harder when I have these big responsibilities. It's going to be way higher risk than it is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so insightful to be able to be in that space and recognize it and really be able to take the leap of faith. And at what point were you, with absence of proof, were you feeling ready to take the leap of faith from your job and just focus full time on this business?
So my last day was 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
I've been full time for 2 weeks. So it's very, very new. Right now, I'm confident to say that it was the right decision. In these past 2 weeks, I've gotten more accomplished than I feel like I did in 6 months beforehand. Just having this full-time focus where my brain isn't like so exhausted from working all day, and now I have to do this like side hustle. So it's great. I think I realized that I was never going to feel ready. It's an incredibly scary leap, especially when you have a corporate job and you're getting paid well and you've honestly lived a certain lifestyle. I was doing my financial models and I'm like, wow, like this is going to be very, very different for me. Like I'm going to have to, you know, never go out to eat, never shop, never do any of these things. And I mean, first world problems for sure. It was definitely an adjustment. And for me, it was worth it to kind of be my own boss and control what I feel like is control my own destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is one of those things where, and talk about programming even around alcohol, but it's the same thing. Whenever you have a stable job, people always reiterate and reemphasize like health insurance benefits and like salary and 401ks and this and that. And it's like, what about my soul fulfillment? Does that
literally
matter? Or should I just crush my soul and just like stick this out for the rest of my life? And I totally get it too, because I work full time doing health coaching in addition to mindful. And so I feel the same way sometimes, where I'm like, how much more could I really accomplish if I was focusing full time? And so it is that pull between taking the leap of faith and knowing that it's going to expand with the more energy that you're able to put into it. And it's also this vibrant energy, not this like leftover,
right.
I'm burned out from work energy.
Yeah.
So really exciting. I know I saw your post recently. I was like, yes,
we made it.
We made it. I'm like, I've never met you before, and I just am so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know that feeling, right? When we all have, a lot of us that have connected in Sober Curiosity or just online with businesses know the feeling of really pursuing your dreams, and the grind of entrepreneurship is tough, but it's the passion that drives you. And sobriety definitely lends itself to building that. Like you said, how much more you can get done in a year of sobriety, I feel like is mind blowing. Like how your life can transform in a year.
I was talking to my friend, and maybe it was a podcast, and they were like, what's like the biggest thing that you've experienced with sobriety? And I'm like, have you seen the show Limitless? Like I've seen the movie Limitless, and like that's how you feel when you're sober. Like you literally, it feels like the world is opened up. You're like your mental clarity, your energy. And like you said, like my work doesn't feel like work. Like I probably work at least 3 times more now, as many hours than I did at Amazon. But like, this is not work. This is like financially building equity, but then also building something that I love and I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And something that can never be taken away from you too. And even in the current climates, people are getting laid off all the time, and just having this sense of security and building something that's yours, that you've created out of your own imagination and passion, and you're building it from the ground up. There's just something that's so like fulfilling and driving within that. Especially when it's so deeply connected to something that was healing for yourself and your life. And the evolution of you as a human, to be able to share that with other people and just directly see the need for it is so exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's been amazing.
Okay. I know. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I do remember that, and I mean, we've all probably experienced this, especially when making the decision to opt out of drinking voluntarily without necessarily having a problem. And TikTok is brutal. And people are...
You understand, at least.
Oh, yeah. I know. When I first started my TikTok, I didn't turn comments on because I was like, I can't emotionally handle this.
Yeah. I mean, that's healthy.
Yeah. But I eventually was like, I'm just going to learn how to deal with this. And so I know one of the things that we connected on at a point was I posted about your posts about why do people feel, so why can people be so judgmental about your decision not to drink? So that's kind of one side of the question I'm asking, is how you deal with people who are judgmental about your choice not to drink, and also just haters who don't really understand the concept of creating alcohol-free bar nightlife events.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, and it's a learning process every day. I will say that. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that has made it easier, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I feel like the positive so outweighs the negative. I mean, one, just in terms of like net numbers, like the thousands of people that are so kind, and their comments are so encouraging, versus like the couple hundred that maybe aren't. It's like the 99% are amazing. But I think we as humans tend to look at the 1% and take that as the truth, which is something that I've been very focused on changing about like my own patterns. But in terms of dealing with it, I think one actually strategy that I talked about with my therapist, because it really affected me, and I've been not super open about how bad it affected me, but it sent me, I mean, deep down in some shit in October. And it was really, really hard. And the good thing was that it was a catalyst for me to get back into therapy and really start to figure out why these things bothered me so much. And so we had this exercise, and I recommend anyone that's listening try this if they have their own limiting beliefs or harmful things that they say to themselves. But you write at the top of a piece of paper whatever that belief is. So like, for instance, a lot of people on the internet were calling me stupid. They're like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then under that statement, you write all of the things that are factually true that disprove that belief. So it's kind of like, okay, could a stupid person build a company? No. Could a stupid person do all of these things? And the answer is no. So you're like proving to yourself that this really awful thought that you might believe a little bit is actually untrue. And then keeping that piece of paper for when those thoughts starts to come up again, or if somebody is mean to you on the internet again, you can go back and be like, no, this is not true, so that you don't get sent down the spiral. Because I almost quit absence several times. I was like, this is not worth it. I don't need to be told that I'm stupid on a daily basis, or that I'm an idiot, or that any of the things that I would get told. But I'm so freaking glad that I stuck with it.
I am too. And so the idea of reframing and really being able to look at those beliefs that are being projected onto you by other people and asking yourself, how true is this? And how much am I just like really hyperfixating on the negativity instead of the positivity? And something else I heard recently too that was really helpful, because I think even in the realms of what we do is obviously caring about other people, creating a good time for other people, creating a healthy time for other people, helping people with their drinking. These areas obviously are probably coming from people who are highly sensitive or who are empathetic. And so I know it's definitely taken a toll on me at times when I've seen things or just had people be super judgmental about what I'm doing. But recently I saw something that a lot of the people that say those types of things, I mean, consider the source of where it's coming from. They're probably not that happy if they're doing that. People who are highly judgmental of you putting themselves out there online have probably never done it themselves or had even the slightest clue about how much courage it takes to
Oh my God.
continuously show up online. And I know that a lot of people say they wouldn't do it because of judgment, but I always just remind myself that the people who are judging are someone who has never done it, and and remembering your intention behind it is always so helpful for me too, that I'm just trying to help people. So I don't, if that brings out negativity in you or judgment in you, then I can't do anything about that. Like, I know what my intentions are, and that's really helpful for me. But dude, it's hard.
It is so hard. I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown and her work at all.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And she has this thing about, haters. The arena. Exactly. Yeah. If you're not in the arena, I don't care what you think. And that's just where I'm at. I'm like, if you're not out here trying to build a company, trying to spread positivity, trying to be a health coach, if you're not trying to do something dope, I don't care what you think about me, because it is so easy to sit there behind an avatar or an anonymous username and be mean to other people. But like, show me what you've done. Like, I just, and that's maybe sounds negative or sassy, but like, people are awful. And like, unless you're going to, what's that?
I'm here for it.
Yeah, no, but it's like, and also like own your bullying. If you're going to be mean on the internet, stand behind it. And people don't. And I think that that's super lame.
It's really cowardly to be able to sit there and talk to people who are trying to have a positive impact and be hyperly judgmental. And it's like, yeah, I get it. It's, you're putting yourself out there, which can be the reasoning that people say that. But it's also, I don't know, I think that it's kind of silly not to leverage social media in a lot of ways. I think that it's what a smart person would do, because that's how you reach your audience, and it's free marketing. And so I think it's silly to shit on it just because it's something you wouldn't have the courage to do yourself. And especially when the intention is to do nothing but provide inspiration or support to people who are trying to better themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, I know. I loved that Brene Brown special where she talks about it. And she talks about it in a special, and I think Dare to Lead, or I forget which book, but yeah. I always bring up Brene Brown. I'm freak.
She's amazing. No, what she talks about is so important, and I love her work on vulnerability and earned vulnerability. That's something that I've been really focused on too. Is like, when you are building a business, you go on a lot of podcasts or a lot of things, and you're putting yourself in a position to be extremely scrutinized. And yeah, you just got to have a really thick skin. And I think that I'm definitely getting there. I mean, over the last couple of months, now I get hate comments, and I'm literally like, hey, whatever. It's just so, you just get used to it.
It's wild how quickly you get comfortable outside your comfort zone, if that makes sense. The more that you do things and the more you expose yourselves. And I have friends that say, I could never do that. I could never put myself out there. I'm like, that's what I thought when I started doing it. But then I realized this is what I want to do. So I'm going to have to just accept the fact that there's going to be judgment involved, and that there's also going to be people who are really positively impacted by the work you're doing, and continue forward. And you do develop a thick skin, and you do develop like, okay, this is what I want to share. This is what I don't want to share. And it's a good application to our personal lives as well, and recognizing that maybe everyone doesn't deserve full access to us, and you can still be open and you can still be public without giving everyone full access to you. Just because you're doing something public where you do a lot of showcasing of yourself and your work, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to know every detail about you.
Totally. So, I agree.
Yeah. So in the second part of that question is, do you have any areas of your life that you felt like on a personal level, not even with the business or social media, where it was challenging in your relationships when you first decided to stop drinking?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think luckily this time around, I have just the best friends ever. Like, my partner is amazing. My friends are amazing. There was no judgment. It was just like, okay, cool. And also, most of my close people in my life know my history with alcohol, so I don't think it was that surprising. They're like, okay, yeah, like, she cuts out alcohol a lot. But I don't think that was true when I first went sober when I was 19. That was a very challenging period. And I think that that's one of my main goals with Absence of Proof, is not only normalizing being sober curious and, not having people be like, this is weird, but like actually making it cool. Like, I want kids growing up, not kids, but like teenagers, to be like, wow, wait, there's actually a really cool group of adults that don't drink or drink less. And that's like cool. Like, maybe I don't need to go get blacked out tonight. Like, I just want to create this example of like sobriety doesn't have to mean that you're in AA or you can't be around alcohol or anything. Like, being sober curious can just mean I don't feel the need to drink and I'm not going to be peer pressured to drink if I don't want to. If you want to drink, great. But I think just telling teenagers that you don't have to in a way that's not like dare or something like.
Right. Yeah, it's just presenting a new lens to view it through. And I totally feel the same way about it, where it's like it can be an exhibition of like empowerment as opposed to the restriction and isolation, which is the case for some people. And that is something, there's a wide spectrum too of drinking. And I think we've really delineated it into people who have addiction and people who don't. And so that provides only one lens to look at our relationship with alcohol, and almost this deterrent to explore it unless you feel like you have a problem, which I think is really doing ourselves a disservice when we're trying to better ourselves, work on ourselves, when we are struggling with anxiety and depression and we're kind of like, oh, but not alcohol. I have a normal relationship, but normal could be blacking out every weekend, which has total effects on our mental health. And so providing that new perspective where it's actually cool to be comfortable and confident enough in your own skin to like, oh, I just don't, it's not awkward.
Yeah.
I just don't like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think we've touched upon a few of them, but I wanted to ask if you were to say, okay, these have been the main benefits of not drinking. These have been the main challenges. Let's start with challenges first so we can do benefits after.
I would say biggest challenge is social life changing. Not like people losing friends, but more so like, what do I do on my Friday nights in New York City? There are very limited alcohol-free options in New York. And I am, I think everyone that lives in New York can relate to this, but it's very expensive to live here. So like, I can't just like go to Broadway shows. Like this is not, you can't just like go out and do other activities. And so the classic activity is like, we're going to bars. And so that adjustment was weird for me. And I also think that there is an adjustment with celebratory rituals that has been difficult for me to adjust to. I loved like a really nice glass of wine on a fancy date night or an anniversary. I loved cheersing with champagne at weddings. I loved like these type of rituals. And what I'm grateful for about the non-alcoholic industry growing so fast is we now have replacements for all of those where you can still participate, but most restaurants are still a little bit behind in truly incorporating those options. So I would say that's been difficult. But the benefits, I mean, the productivity, the mental health, like it was like night and day, my anxiety from when I was drinking, even in moderation or even once or twice a week to now when I don't drink at all. I would also say my energy levels are crazy. Like you wake up on Saturday morning and actually want to do things instead of sleep all morning. You're really getting your weekend mornings back. And then I would just say like, I'm just so grateful because like absence of proof wouldn't exist. And like, it's so sick. I'm so proud and happy about what we've built. And the fact that the catalyst for that was not drinking is like really cool for me.
Yeah, I know. I was also reading your website, stalking you.
Of course.
Before our podcast.
As you should.
Due diligence. And I noticed that you mentioned that you're a big, believer in manifestation and the energy that we create in our lives. And I'm wondering your thoughts on the effects, living alcohol-free has on our manifestation capability.
Oh my gosh. I mean, crazy. I think I have a lot of friends who are like manifestation coaches. And their number one thing is that alcohol is a blocker to, and whatever level of manifestation you believe in, whether it's like you can actually manifest things, whether it's, you need to do good and good will come to you, whatever level it is, drinking is just not it. Like it just, for me at least, I felt like it was such a time suck. And when you're trying to get your energy to a place of gratitude and health and all of these things that are supposed to help with manifesting, and then you're putting poison in your body, it's like in my opinion, it was like a direct signal to the universe where it's like, do you really want to be happy and healthy? Because you know what this is doing to you and you're intentionally doing it. So yeah, I think absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I think, I mean, especially at the levels in which I was drinking, but it is definitely this kind of depressant to our frequency, I feel, and what we're capable of attracting. Because not only that, but the anxiety, the lack of self-confidence, the effect on our self-image. And so I would have to absolutely agree. It made such a difference in terms of like what I was able to create, and what you said too about energy and mental health and just all the things, creativity, imagination. And a lot of people use alcohol as a version of connection too. And I think sometimes that can be a really false sense of unifying ourselves with other people when, although it might feel awkward to do at first, to socialize sober, I think I don't know about you, but I've definitely felt deepened connection with other people and more aligned relationships, that you actually really have a lot more in common with the people that you do choose to spend time with. And also, not getting comfortable being alone has been such an upside, where not needing to distract myself. I think I did that a lot with alcohol too, where it was just an easy out for entertainment constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think connecting when you're sober is such a better formula for creating long-lasting friendships. One thing that has come out of Absence of Proof that I did not expect was the amount of new friends that I personally have made, but then also the amount of people that come to Absence of Proof events alone with the intention of making friends, and the success rate of that. It's so special.
Oh my God, that warms my heart.
It's literally the most pure, like it's been the biggest unexpected blessing of this is like, and people will DM me, they're so nervous. They're like, hi, like I just stopped drinking. None of my friends like get it. Like I want to make new friends. Is it weird if I come alone? And I'm like, absolutely not. Come alone. Give me your name for the door. I will introduce you to all my people. And now there's like an actual group of girls that like comes to every event and like they're just amazing. And now they hang out all the time, and I always see them on Instagram together. So it's just really, really amazing. And I don't know if that type of connection would be possible if there was a lot of alcohol involved.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And that actually, I have a question about that, because I think, to a lot of people who go to bars, drink, socialize, might be like, what's the difference? You can just go to a bar and get drinks, get mocktails there. Why do you have to be at a fully sober event? And I would love to hear your response to that. I have my thoughts too.
Oh my gosh, I get that all the time where they're like, why? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And one thing that I will say about like the haters is I've been trying to give people the benefit of the doubt where they are genuinely curious. So now every hater, I answer them as if it's like a friend being genuinely curious, because I do think that there's just like a lack of knowledge and education on this. But for me personally, like I do not want to be around a bunch of drunk people if I'm sober. I think anyone that has experienced that kind of knows like the eye roll that it can be of like, oh my God, like they are just out of their mind and they're not going to remember this, and that there's no positive connection that's coming here. So I don't want to be around it. And I feel that way about like a New York bar on 11 p.m. on a Friday night. Like this is not a place I want to be. However, with absence, it's this unspoken thing where everyone is sober. Like you're not asked why you're not drinking. You're not getting a mocktail and asked why you're doing that. People aren't looking at you weird. It's just kind of like, we don't drink tonight for whatever reason. And that's just like the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a collective energy together and community that is brought together. I was actually listening to another sober curious coach talking about how the difference in frequency when people are drinking and people aren't. And she's it's not good or bad, whatever. If you choose to drink, like there's no judgment. It's just a different wavelength that you're on once you start drinking versus when you're not drinking. And a lot of times that just feels uncomfortable for the people who aren't drinking, to be around people who are kind of continuously lowering their vibration through drinking more and more. And you feel a need to either get comfortable being around people that you're on different wavelengths than, or you feel like you need to kind of go down to their level, which is, and she says, reiterates you, it's not about like levels. It just is. Even people who drink regularly, like, I know I was probably not the most exciting person to talk to someone who was sober when I was shit faced. Like, that's just
totally.
I'm sure it was like annoying at AF, you know? So, and oftentimes I actually kind of feel like it almost triggers me thinking of my own drinking when I am talking to someone shit-faced, like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was probably doing. And this is exactly what I looked like. And I'm never drinking again.
Literally.
So, yeah, it's kind of a mismatch of energy.
Totally. I agree. I think everybody should challenge themselves to at least cut out drinking for a month and like one, see what happens to your physical health, but observe drunk people and then think about if that's the way that you want to show up in the world. And again, this is not having a glass of wine. This is like people are blacking out. And I think one of the reflections that I had was like, you are not yourself when you're drinking. At least I don't think you are. I think you say things you don't mean. I think you act in ways that you wouldn't stand behind if you're sober, but you are still you and you have to own the decisions that you make when you're drunk. And I think that's a very scary place to be because you can say or do things that you never would do sober, but you still said and did them. And I remember reflecting on that several times when I would wake up hungover and be like, did I really say that? Did I really embarrass myself like that? It was just a feeling that I never wanted again.
Yeah. I think we've all been there where you wake up and you're like, I'm not even going to look at my phone right now.
Yeah. Who do I need to apologize to?
Yeah. The like clear moments where you remember something throughout the day and you're like, oh my God. Oh my God. I worked in the hospitality industry for a long time during when I was drinking heavily to pay for grad school and everything that I'm now using my education for. But I would literally be standing at a table and remember something I said the night before, be taking an order like, oh my God.
Yes. No, literally.
This is really embarrassing.
Totally. And I think too, it's like, you don't even mean what you said. Like, it was just, it's just crazy. It's still wild now that I'm removed from it for so long. It's crazy that it's so accepted to show up in the world like that. Like, it's just, people are just like, oh, she's just shit-faced. Like, okay, but like, if she was sober acting like that, you would like check her into an institution. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy that that's acceptable behavior.
Totally. I think I reflect on that all the time with people in my lives that were maybe a little bit more taken aback when I stopped drinking. And I am always just thinking, like, how is that okay? But this is not okay. Or this is alarming to you, but that wasn't alarming to you. I was killing myself slowly and blacking out. And, you know, it's just what people get used to you being a certain way. And it is what it is. It's like weird when you change, even when that way of being was harming yourself and clearly a very poor reflection of, you know, you as a person. And so I think it's interesting, and I'm sure it's something a lot of people deal with. It sounds like you had a lot of supportive people, but I know clients all the time and people all the time are just expressing that the people around them have a hard time with them not drinking. And it's just funny that a lot of times it's how it reflects on their own drinking and the relationship dynamic. And there's so many things that go into it, but it is interesting when like I could black out, say the dumbest things ever, humiliate myself, wake up like in a pool of throw up or with scratches all over myself, but that was fine.
Right.
This is the problem.
This is the problem. Exactly. No, I completely agree. And I think that it does force people to evaluate their own relationship with alcohol when other people decide to not do it as much. And I think one thing that I've been really conscious of is not placing judgment on drinking. I was vegan for a really long time and I had a vegan YouTube channel. And I was very judgmental of people that were not vegan, which is so ironic because I'm not vegan anymore. And I think that the least effective way to get people to see your side is to force it on them. And so with alcohol, it's like the same thing. It's like, absence of proof does not care if you drink or not. We're just providing options. Um, and that's what we're going to do.
I love that. I think it's really a beneficial place, not only for other people to, approach things that way, but it's also healthy for you, because I definitely have had moments where I felt like frustrated or misunderstood, and that like would then come out as being like judgmental in return, where you're like, oh, whatever, you just get like feeling like people are judging your choice, and you kind of do it in the same way. And I mean, I've like long since, I'm almost 3 years without alcohol this year. And yeah. And so you just realize like judgment in any form, even outside of your relationship with alcohol, especially in the realm of health and wellness, and even in terms of personal development and healing work, like the more you do these things, the more clarity you have in your own life, and watching other people's patterns too, and seeing that maybe like they could be self-sabotaging, but looking at it in a way as like, what worked for me like should work for you, and you should change in this way, is just A, exhausting, B, unhelpful, ineffective. It doesn't really, like, generally people don't like being told how you think they should live. And so just leading by example is like the most gentle way, I think.
Totally. And I think going back to setting good examples for like future generations, like no 13-year-old wants to be told not to drink or do drugs. That's just I remember sitting there in those lectures and being like, okay, like you don't care what any of those people say. But what I did care about at that time was being cool. And I would look to older people and, the cool kids in high school or the cool kids wherever. And alcohol was very much a part of that identity. And so what we're hoping to at least have a small impact on is that. And like you said, leading by example.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's so true. And just kind of the idea that, oh, I forget what I was even saying. I did that brain fart. But yeah, just leading by example, what we're talking about, and just really kind of, that's what I was going to say, is that I think when we go through these personal evolution, whether it's in drinking, healing, like I said, any of these departments, it can be so easy to have that judgmental stage at the beginning, even like spiritual development. And, you're like, oh, you're not as like, you see so much pretentious spirituality, or pretentious vegans, or pretentious this, pretentious that. It's like usually people in the initial stages of that very same change themselves that are not quite so far from those people they're judging as they think they are. And so the further you get from it, the more you're like, oh, that is embarrassing to be judging people in any way. Like everyone's on their own path. But I wanted to ask, anything else on that line of thinking?
All good.
I wanted to ask too, when we were talking about young people, you said, just leading by example and providing this sort of new perspective. And so I'm wondering your thoughts on what I notice a lot of Gen Z, because you're 25 or 26, right?
I'm 25, so I'm the oldest Gen Z.
Oldest Gen Z. I think I'm an elder millennial. I'm a middle millennial. But I noticed that it seems there's a lot more sober curious people in the younger generation. And so why do you think that is? What do you think is contributing to like people being more sober curious at a younger age? Because definitely was not the case when I was 25.
Totally. No, absolutely. I think Gen Z in general has this attitude of like hyper independence and like making decisions for themselves. And also like what I think Gen Z is awesome at is like they are not judgmental. I think that they are like very pro doing your own thing. Whatever you want to do is great, which is awesome. And I don't think that like, maybe millennials don't have that attitude as much. I think mental health is also top of mind for Gen Z. I think social media has probably had a really negative effect on a lot of mental health for Gen Z. And they're also like a very pro therapy generation in my experience. Like for me and my peers, everyone is like in therapy, really wanting to be intentional about taking control of their lives and doing healthy things. And alcohol, again, is just not something that really fits into that equation. I think what's sad is that I had posted a TikTok asking that exact question because I didn't want to speak for all of Gen Z, and I'd been asked a lot, and I kind of wanted to do a poll. And there was a lot of responses that said that they had experienced or witnessed alcoholism in their family and saw the negative effects of that, like
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of responses like that. And I think that that is really interesting as well, of like kids seeing, like, I do not want that. Whatever that is, I do not want it to be involved in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like an increasing level of like self-awareness and breaking cycles rather than repeating it. And
Hmm.
I think it really, the millennials, it's in there too, but it just seems really prevalent, this kind of trajectory of personal development. And like you said, more of like an openness and willingness to go to therapy and not have it be stigmatized, or just this like level of resistance. I can do it on my own. It's kind of, what is the point, when you
Hmm.
have resources at your disposal, why not use them? And the theme of mental health seems really big. And but although it's sad to hear that there's a lot of addiction that's contributing to the shift for younger people, I think it's great that there's that reflection rather than the perpetuation of a toxic cycle subconsciously, because that happens so often that you just repeat the patterns you see. You
Hmm.
repeat the patterns of drinking you see with your parents, of communication. Trauma can affect us in ways where we just kind of suppress it and it's dictating our lives, but it sounds like it's being brought consciously to the surface and people are actively changing and breaking the cycle, which is good because I'm not sure whether addiction has increased or over the past couple generations. I wouldn't be surprised if it has, but regardless, it just sounds like people are more aware of the fact that they don't want to repeat the
Totally.
toxic patterns of their parents.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, wrapping it up, I think I have a couple more questions. And one is, if you were to give advice, in the realm of sober curiosity and entrepreneurship, because what you're doing is so cool and definitely unconventional for the times right now. And so, how would you? What would be your biggest piece of advice for people who are either starting a sober curious journey or an entrepreneurship journey, both?
Yeah, I would say sober curious. I always say to maybe do a test run. Say I'm not going to drink for a month and see what happens. Within that, I think finding friends that want to do it with you is really fun because then it's like, oh, we're going to go try a new mocktail place or we're going to go try this together and it becomes social. And then also be very intentional about when you're removing alcohol, what are you replacing it with in terms of like your time, your energy, all of that. I think a lot of us have hobbies or interests that we don't get to because life is very busy. And when you remove alcohol, you all of a sudden have this time to do cool things. So don't think of it as like you're losing something, but more so like you're gaining the time to do something that you really care about. Um, and then entrepreneurship, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way, but like just got to do it. Like it's literally like just ascendant mentality of like, I don't know what I'm doing, probably will never know fully what I'm doing, but I'm at least going to try. And I think that removes some of the pressure that we feel to like, we don't need to be Jeff Bezos. Absence of proof does not need to be $1 billion company to still be successful.
Very good.
Um, yeah. So yeah, those would be my two pieces of advice.
I think that's awesome. That's hilarious. Send it mentality. I love that. And take messy action is a good one too. Even with
Yes.
podcast, like even with podcasting, even with coaching, even with starting a business. It's just I think we get really scared away by the idea that a million people have done it or this already exists or something, of that nature. And just like who gives a
I
fuck?
mean, that's the thing too. Yeah. Like, who cares? You have one life. You have one
Yeah.
life. Do you want to live it or do you not? Like,
Yeah. I always share the deathbed perspective. How do you want to feel on your deathbed? Do you want to be thinking, oh, I wish I had cared more about other people's opinions and definitely reined in my dreams a little bit more and I'm super happy I didn't chase them. No, of course not. You're going to think like, why did I care about those dumb details that in the big scheme of things don't really matter? I wanted to live a happy, fulfilled life.
mhm.
And then secondarily, what you said about the intentionality behind what you choose to put on your plate when you take alcohol off is so important too. Because I think it's easy to kind of get sucked into other like negative time sucks or habits and just kind of bringing that conscientious awareness to, okay, I'm taking out this negative thing that's creating a lot of space in my life. So how do I want to fill that void with what people, what projects, what passions, what activities, what hobbies, which can feel a little daunting at first for sure, but oh,
Yeah.
it's so nice talking to you. And I also wanted to just have some space for you to share, like, okay, where can people find you? What's exciting coming up for you? I know you have an LA pop-up you're doing soon. So share all the things about where people can find you and what's coming up.
Yeah, I would say Instagram is home base. That's the first place to see things normally. However, we are going to get more into our email list and newsletter where we have community highlights, recipes, all of that fun stuff. So you can subscribe to the newsletter on my website, which is absenceofproof.com. If you want to order any product, it's absenceofproof.shop. So we have a great selection of non-alcoholic products. And then, yeah, LA, baby, I'm so excited. There are without giving too much away, many other cities that are in the pipeline. So hopefully we'll be everywhere very, very soon.
You better have one in Boston so I can come.
Wink, wink. There may be something coming.
I gotta come. I'll be like the other millennial at the party.
No. It'll be great. But yeah, lots to come, and yeah.
I'm so excited, and I'm so happy for you and excited. I love watching people grow, and it's been so cool just to watch your process unfold, and it makes my heart truly happy to see people just chasing their dreams and really like not allowing. I know it hasn't been easy for you this whole time to not allow the negativity get to you and all that type of stuff. And it's just so powerful to even just share that, you know, like keep going despite maybe other people not believing in your vision. But if you believe in your vision, that's the most important thing. And look where it's taken you. You've been in Forbes or something, like, right?
Fortune.
Yeah. And like all this crazy shit, most powerful women. I'm like, yes, see, like who cares about them TikTok haters?
That's kind of where I'm at too. It's like once you get those wins of whatever your KPI is, whatever you want, whether it's more signups on your online, course, or you want to be in press, or whatever you want. Once you get a little bit of those wins, you're literally like, screw that. Like, I don't care about the haters. Like, look what I just did. And I think that there's been a lot of those lately where I'm like, no, like this is factually worth it. So you telling me that I'm stupid is just not correct.
You're like, I was just in Fortune though. So
I was literally like, I don't, like, should I tag you? Like, I don't.
Yeah, you're like at the haters. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool to see. And I think sometimes the universe kind of tests us with those little really low points ahead of some big wins to make sure we earn them, you know?
Absolutely. Got to stay humble for sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me. And I hope to have you on again sometime in the future. And thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah. All right. Bye.